of the accuser at this time. It's breaking every chain, setting the captives free. For it speaks a better word to silence the enemy.
It's singing out with life. It's shouting down the lines. It echoes through the night. The precious blood of Christ speaks a better word. Speaks a better word. It's calling out my name. It's breaking every chain. It's making all things right. The precious blood of Christ speaks a better word. Speaks a better word. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. You're worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Sing worthy, worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. You're worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for deserve the praise. Worthy is your name, and worthy is your name, Jesus. You deserve the praise. Worthy is your name.
This one fact, it's not for the sake of the people. It's actually because the name of Jesus is worthy. He will receive an inheritance from every tribe, tongue, and nation. John Piper said it this way. He said, missions exist because worship doesn't.
Uh, I did come up with a question, though, a while ago. I asked Roger, Josh, Keith, trying to work out schedules so I could spend a little extra time up here while they're all gone. And I did come up with a question, though, that I hadn't asked Josh. I hadn't thought of it. But Emma texted me earlier to make sure that I'm playing bass on Sunday, or Wednesday, when she's leading the intercession set. Do we still go get tacos after? Emma's like, yeah. Anyhow, I'm glad to be here tonight. 2 weeks ago, I wasn't sure that was possible. It's been quite the interesting start to August for everybody, huh? I live down in Northport, which, I don't know how much news coverage has gotten out, around and what have you, but Northport pretty much, especially down on the south side where I'm at, looks like a war zone. From what little Ian left when he decided to come by and spend 10 and a half hours beating on the side of our house with wind and rain and everything else. And it's been quite the experience since. We lost quite a bit of stuff around the house and a lot of house damage. I don't know what came through the roof, but something came shooting through the roof and left us about a big 12-inch hole in the middle of it, in the middle of the storm, and which caused the ceiling to collapse in. But God worked in a great way because it landed right next to the guitar collection. And without me saying a word, the family instinctively went for the bass guitars first before worrying about anything else. So that was great. Save the guitars. Let the house go. Save the guitars. But we got that done. Everything. The only two that didn't survive were the two cheapest ones that I never play. So, which is all right with me. I'll take the insurance money and buy something I will use with them because I didn't like those two anyway. I mean, it's an adventure. I don't like bankers, attorneys, and insurance agents anyway. And now that's all I'm talking to every day, I think. And so it's been a real trying of faith and patience, and it's been exciting. They totaled out my car because it looked like Ian beat the side of it with a tree limb and dented up the whole driver's side like you wouldn't believe. And I didn't think that they would total it. The guy came out, looked at it, and he goes, "Oh, that's totaled," before he even started taking pictures of it. And sure enough, it was, but I bought it back from him for $800, and I'm going to get it relicensed, and I'm going to keep driving it. I car shopped for 2 days, and don't go car shopping right now for a used vehicle. There ain't nothing out there. It's all junk. If you're not spending $15,000, it's all junk out there right now. I just couldn't do it. I'm like, I'll keep the car that I know, even though it looks like junk, and I'll drive it. God will provide something else a little bit down the road, but I want to thank everybody. I know some from the House of Prayer. It's very hard when you've been in ministry all these years and you've done all these things. We've, raised thousands for missions and take it yourself or send it to other people. Or, back in the late 90s, I had an old school bus and we ripped half of the seats out of it. And we would go down in the winter months in the town where I was at in Indiana, and we fed homeless people. Put them on the bus so they could get out of the weather and stuff, and we'd have a hot meal set up on tables, and you spend your whole life doing those kinds of things, and then when something like this happens, I had a friend who put a post up. He said, Chuck and Jeannie have done all this stuff for other people all these years, and they're in a pinch. We need to help them, and people started sending us money. I may have cried hardest from the one that came from here. A young lady sent an offering, and it was labeled for gas and tacos. It made me tear up instantly. So I'm like, I just can't take people's money. So like there was a family that I knew that they had been without power a couple days. They lost everything in the refrigerator and freezer, and they got 5 kids in elementary school. I took him a generator because we had power back, so I found out about it, so I took him my generator and a can of gas and found out all their food was ruined and stuff, so I gave him the $100 I had in my wallet. And I kid you not, an hour and a half later, a preacher that I've had breakfast with 2 times and have maybe spent a total of 2 hours with the guy in my entire life stops by the house and leaves me $100. So I'm like, okay, that ain't enough. So then we bust out the checkbook and we start writing. We found out about a family that he self-employed and out of work he lost 10 days of work. Family with kids, so they're going to be hurting. So let's write them a check. So I took them over a check and dropped it off at their house, And they were like, are you kidding me? And again, people, we know them, but we really don't know them. It's not like we're friends or anything. We've never eaten a meal together or anything like that. I just know who they are, and I knew they were hurting. We found out about a young lady, had a 6-year-old daughter, and their ceiling came in and collapsed during the storm because they lost the roof, and they literally escaped in the middle of it with what they were wearing. They lost everything. Write them a check. Hand out $1,000. What comes in the mail the next day? A check for $1,000. I'm like, okay, God. I'm like, I'm not used to this getting thing, So it's been quite the roller coaster ride of everything the last couple of weeks, and I thank everybody for your prayers. I mean, people have reached out, Roger, Josh. Have just constantly, you guys are all right? You need anything? It looked like we were going to run out of fuel for a while, and Roger was trying to arrange us to get some gas cans. And I'm like, okay, you can get them. I don't know if you can get them here because at that point we were still flooded in. And, it was exciting. It's been an interesting month. So all that going on. And but you find out how faithful God is in the middle of it. And you get reminded of a few things. And that's kind of where I'm coming from tonight. If you have your Bibles, if you want to turn to the book of Hebrews in chapter number 11. And I thought I might take a few minutes tonight just to kind of remind us hey, can we mute just the audio to the live stream for like 30 seconds? Yeah. Tell me when. Okay. So anyhow, if you would do that, I would appreciate it. Keeping everybody in prayer, it would mean a lot to me. I talked to my wife back in the spring. I kind of wanted to go on this trip to Iraq, and I talked to her about it. And then I didn't follow through with it because I just kind of felt like I'm not sure. I think I need to be around here. Well, yeah, when back half of your house is gone, you kind of need to be around for things. So that all kind of worked out according to God, I guess, putting it in me to hang around for a little bit. I'm going to catch the next one. I'm going to go to Iraq with them. Hebrews 11:1 says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." How many times have we all heard that scripture? A couple thousand? Did you ever watch Dr. Frederick K.C. Price on TV? How many times did he quote that every Sunday that he delivered? Verse number 6, "And then if you ever get a book from my Father, he will write this on the inside cover. He has done it with every book that he's ever given me my entire life." It says, "But without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently Seek Him. I think I just needed to come tonight, not only for myself, but maybe for some of you that are here, to remind you that we are beings and creatures and creations of faith. It's part of being a disciple, part of being a follower of Christ. We have the element of faith that a lot of other people don't ever have or experience in their lifetimes. Let me give you just a simple definition in case you don't know about faith. To agree, to assure, to believe, obey, persuade, trust, yield. I like this one that W.E. Vine put down. To consent to authority. I read a book one time called Your Church Has a Fantastic Future by Robert Schuller. I miss Robert Schuller on TV. This is the day that the Lord hath made. I watched him all the time. I loved him. For an old classical Pentecostal, grown-up, raised Pentecostal boy, you know, where we shouted and ran the aisles and everything else. I don't know why I was so fascinated watching Robert Schuller, but I watched him all the time. And in this book, Your Church Has a Fantastic Future, he talked about buying the piece of property where they eventually built the church, and then they built what became the Crystal Cathedral next door to it. And he talked about they had made an agreement to buy the land and secured it just before a bunch of developers wanted it. And he got it at a certain price, but the way that the bank did the deal was he had like 120 days to pay for the piece of land. Otherwise, there was a developer who wanted it, and they were going to pay like 10 times as much. So they gave what they had out of the church. They put it down. They secured the piece of land, and they were trying to work to raise the money to pay off. But they went through a long period of time that they didn't get any money to put down on the land. And it came down to the last week where by closing of the bank on Friday, he had to have the balance of the money or they were going to lose the piece of property. Okay? So they're going all through the week, and he's like, I'm praying. I believe God, and I'm holding to it. And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, one of the church members calls and says, Pastor, I got some money for you. Let's meet down at the bank. And he said they got in there literally half hour or so before the bank closed at business. And the guy gave him a check, not knowing how much they needed. The guy handed him a check to the penny for what they needed to secure that piece of land. He said he took a lot of criticism from ministers, colleagues, and friends of his for taking such a risk on what he did in doing the business deal in the fashion that he did, and they called it a risky thing and said you should have never jeopardized. You would have lost the money that you already had in the church. It would have been gone. You'd have never gotten it back. And Robert Schuller replied with this line that I have never forgotten. Sometimes faith, F-A-I-T-H, is spelled R-I-S-K. We like for it to be nice, neat, and wrapped and handed to us, and that's the way it's done. It's like, oh, that's great. But that's not always the way it is. Faith, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 9, it is a gift. And I want to remind you that if you don't struggle with your faith, ask for it. Give me the gift, Lord. Let me be a person of faith. Help me to become a person of faith that moves inside of you. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 7 says, we walk by faith and not by sight. And that's where a lot of us get hung up. We can walk into a building like this and we can see what it looks like. And we say, oh man, this is beautiful. This is a great spot. But have you ever walked into a house that was just being framed up on the inside, and there's no electric, there's no sheetrock, there's no insulation, there's no doors? You ever walked in one and taken a good look at it, and try to tell exactly what is what and what goes where and what. Now, I've built enough houses in my lifetime, been part of building enough houses. I can walk into a house that's framed up and I can say, well, right there's your kitchen. Over here's your living room. Over here's going to be your great room. Up there's, right over there's your master bathroom. Well, how do you know it's the master bathroom? Because I can tell you by the way the wall is. And I can see, even though that there's nothing there, I can walk through it and I can see what the house is going to look like when it's finished. I can see that floor plan. But a lot of people can't do that. They walk in it and they're just lost. It's like, where do we go from here? But we're reminded by the Apostle Paul that we walk by faith and not by sight. The world walks by sight. What do you have in your hand? And what you got in your hand is what you have. But what they don't have is the Word of God, which speaks to His children. And they may not understand that. But God might be speaking to you and needing you to walk. I walked out in the storm was calming down. I don't know. This is my 5th hurricane I've been in. And this one was a ride. I mean, the others, 4 or 5 hours, you're done. Boom, 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 boom. Go out, clean up, and get on with life. I mean, the wind was hot and heavy at our house for more than 10 hours. I mean, just pounding. And I go outside about 12:30. Sleeping Beauty here was already down for the count. Yep. And I laid down. I was staring out the window. I just couldn't do it. And I got back up, and slipped my clothes on, and I went outside, and it was still raining a little bit. And there was a little bit of a wind, but, I mean, nothing like what it had been just an hour or so before. And I'm walking around a house in the dark, and I'm like, oh, man. My potting shed with all my tools. If you find a nice bullnose shovel with a great-looking wood handle on it, nice hickory handle, it's mine. I don't know where it is. All of our pool equipment destroyed, water softener gone, the electrical panels twisted on the side of that. I mean, it just, and I'm walking around, I'm looking at this stuff, all right? And I look down at the street, and on each side of the street, there's water like we get on our street after a heavy rain. It kind of fills up a little bit and on each side of the street, but you could still see the center of the street and stuff. And I go back in, and I laid back down in bed for a little while, and about 1:30, I got up, and I went back outside to see what was going on. It's still raining lightly, wind's even less, and I look down, I can't see the street, and there's water coming up in the driveway. And I'm like, And I walked around it again. I made a complete path around the yard, and you hear a couple generators by this point. A couple guys had gotten out and gotten their generators running. I tried to get mine running about this point, but I couldn't get it started. And I noticed the yard is like really wet. In fact, at one point, I stepped in, and it was just really muddy, and it pulled my shoe off, and I had to reach down there and get my shoe back out of the mud, to get it back out. And I'm like, well, this ain't real good. So I go back into the house, and about another hour later, it's about 2:30, 2:45, I get up and go out again, and the water's like in front of, we had pulled our cars up as close to the house as we could and had them packed in there, and that's why my car got sacrificed and her car looks perfect, because Ian beat the daylights out of mine and left hers. The insurance company's glad for that, because it would have been a whole different check that they would have had to write. And the water is in front of the front tires of the car. And on the back tires, it's up to the bottom, it's over the rubber and up to the bottom of the rims. And I'm looking across the street, I got my little flashlight, I'm looking, and the guy across the street, the water is up at his back bumper, and I'm like, this ain't good at all. And it stopped like 3.5, 4 feet in front of our door. I mean, that's how close it got to us getting water in the house. All right? And a lot of people, when you get in situations like that, and you're walking around in the darkness, and you're wondering, I mean, you couldn't really see anything out there. Just the first time I went out without a flashlight. I just was going to go out and see what I could see. And you're like, what are you putting your foot on? Where are you stepping? And so many times in life, we get to that situation. It's like, what am I putting my foot on? What am I resting myself on? What am I placing my hope in? What am I placing my future in? And what am I setting my foot on? And we have to see something in order to take a step. Because if it's not there, we won't do it. But that's not why God instructs us. 2 Corinthians says we walk by faith, not by sight. It doesn't matter if I see a step there or not. I am commanded to take a step. And we struggle with that. But we shouldn't. Because we are called to be people of faith. And just quite honestly, the phrase that keeps bouncing through my mind all day long is we are created different than the majority of the people that are around us. And God intended it to be that way. And we need to strive and press on to be the people that He intends for us to be. If you will, flip over to Joshua chapter number 3 with me. Joshua chapter number 3. The first few chapters of Joshua have always really fascinated me and always held my interest for whatever reason. I remember one point, back in the late 80s, I guess when I first got acquainted with Rod Parsley. He preached 60 straight Sunday mornings from Joshua chapter number 1, and he didn't repeat the same sermon any of those weeks. It was just amazing to me what he was pulling out of there. And I kind of got enraptured in that at that point, and I've never let loose of some of the things that are in Joshua 1, 2, 3, 4. It's always held me. And this in particular from Joshua chapter number 3, verse number 4, says, "Yet there shall be a space between you and it," talking about the Ark of the Covenant, "about 2,000 cubits by measure. Come not near unto it, that you may know the way by which you must go." This is what I want you to do. This is what's always held me. "For you have not come this way before." Or if you got your King James like I do, I paraphrase it, but "for you have not come this way heretofore." However you want to put it. We're called as children of God to go places that we haven't been before. Roger, 9 years ago, did you see this? You saw it. See, a lot of people wouldn't. Roger could look at it and see. He's like, if I take this step, this is what's going to happen. But it's a way that he hadn't walked before, and he's had to do things that he hadn't done before to get a result that he didn't have before that time. A lot of us will struggle with the fact that we're being called to go someplace that we haven't been, and it seems unfamiliar to us. Some of us refer to it in a phrase, and I've used it in times past, getting out of our comfort zone. But that's not really how I look at it. If you look at Isaiah chapter 54 and verse number 2, he talks about enlarging the place of your tent. Move the sides out, strengthen the cords, drive your stakes deeper, make your tent bigger. What you're familiar with, what feels comfortable to you, you don't have to pack up and leave it. So we talk sometimes about getting out of our comfort zone. I got to pack up, I got to go away, leave everything I know behind. That's not necessarily what God's talking about. He's talking about being in the place where you are, but increasing yourself. Maybe you need more knowledge about something. When I felt called to start feeding homeless people, well, how do I do it? I started researching. I started talking to people. I started going to people. When I wanted to start a youth center and find out how to get government grants to get it done, I went to a 4-day training session on how to get government grants to start a youth center. And we did it. We had an after-school youth program. We were bringing in 25 to 30 kids 4 days a week, and we were helping them with their homework, and then we would go out and have recreation time, and we didn't pay for a penny of it. I had to increase myself in order to do it, though. How do you start a food bank? How do you run a food bank? Well, you go to somebody who's doing it, and you sit down and you get taught on how to do it. A lot of times, we don't want to take the time or put in the effort of what it takes to increase our tent. We're happy with where our 4 walls are, and we're content to stay there and be right there. But that is not what God is calling us to do. He's saying, I want to take you somewhere that you haven't been before, and in order to do so, you need to work your gift of faith and take steps into places where you haven't been. Pastor Bill Wilson of Metro Ministries up in New York City, no relation, he might as well be, because when we met each other, we got along just like we were brothers or cousins or something, even though we had the same last name. But Bill preached a fabulous sermon one time. If you want something that you don't have, you're going to have to do something that you've never done. That's what God's calling us to do. And he's telling Joshua, he's like, listen, I'm going to take you all into the promised land. You could sit over here on this side of Jordan and look at it all day long if that's what you want to do. But I want to take you someplace that you haven't been to before. What you need to do is just follow me. Have faith. Listen to the call. Listen to the direction. And when you hear the voice, take the step and begin to walk. When you know that I'm walking by and you feel the Spirit coming along, follow it. I think so many times in the last 20 years, the church has been conditioned to flow with what they know in the natural instead of flowing what they know they should be doing in the spiritual. I've heard preachers say, I got up one time at a preacher's conference, and the guy, two or three guys in front of me, they had all talked about they didn't want this wildfire stuff in their church and, creating chaos and whatever. And I got up behind them, and it wasn't what I was scheduled to talk about or anything else, but being the ornery, sarcastic creature and child of my Father that I am, I got up and said, the church has gotten so dry that I'll take any fire that we get, be it a little smoke, a nice burning bonfire, or wildfire. Quit throwing your wet blanket on top of me and let it burn, baby. Let the Holy Spirit burn. And I never got invited to come back there to speak again. Which is all right. I have no problem with that. We've gotten conditioned to act into things that we know, and we've educated ourselves to a point that we think that we got it. We think that we have the knowledge. We think that we have the plan. Instead of following God as he walks by like he instructed Joshua to do. When the ark comes strolling by, get your stuff together and follow along behind it. People may have been saying, well, where's the ark going? Joshua's response was, it doesn't matter. God's coming by. We got to have the faith, and we got to follow along. But we never been on that side of Jordan before. I don't care. Let's go. Let's just pack it up and let's follow where God is going. That's what faith is. You feel the Spirit moving, you step out. Listen, I'll tell you as much as anybody. There's times I felt that God was in something, and I took the big move, and I took the big leap, and I fell flat on my face because I heard a voice, but it sure wasn't God's when I got to it. And I took the pastorate of a church one time. I thought for sure that's what God wanted me to do. I wasn't there just a few weeks, and I found out, I heard something, but it wasn't God. I wasn't sure what I got myself hold up. But I would rather be in that situation than be in the situation where I let God just walk by and I just stay right there at my little homestead and just watched him walk away off into the distance. Joshua chapter 3, verse number 5. Two more things here, and I'll wrap this thing up. Joshua 3:5. Joshua said to the people, sanctify yourselves. It's one of those words we don't use too much in the church anymore. The early Pentecostal church 100 years ago, they were all wrapped up in sanctification. Arguing one side or the other. Did it happen instantly? Was it an ongoing work? They had meetings where people came from all over the world to debate what sanctification was. Here we are 100 years later, and I couldn't tell you the last time I heard anybody in the pulpit get up and use the word sanctification. Sanctify yourselves. Clean yourself. Dedicate yourself. Word that we're all familiar with around here. Consecrate yourself. Or W.E. Vine, separate yourself for a purpose. Think about that for a minute. Joshua said to the people, sanctify yourselves. Set yourself apart for a purpose. We can stay here and be just like other people, or we can follow God and go on to what he has in store for us. The church can do the same today. We can stay in the place where we're at and be content with what we have. I have frustrations with people that I know that there are men in church denominations and they're sitting in high offices and positions, and part of it is they're not happy. They're frustrated. They don't necessarily like what they're doing, but they don't go anywhere else because they get a nice paycheck for it. Sometimes it isn't just the people in leadership. It's the people sitting in the church pews that can develop the same attitude. We got a nice building. It's comfortable. We got some beautiful colored lights. We got this fancy little headset mic. Ooh, we can stay right here and be comfortable with it. I asked Roger a while ago, 9 years ago, did you see this? He says yes. But I guarantee you, if you sit down and talk to him a little bit, you're going to find out that what he saw 9 years ago is a lot bigger than what it is right now. There's more to what he saw, and he still sees it. Because that's what faith does. It shows you things in the supernatural that you need to set yourself apart for. And sanctify yourself unto it. And let that purpose begin to drive you and cause you to do things and take risk that you normally wouldn't take, because you know that it is in God and this is the faith that has been placed inside of you. I have to do this. I gotta go. I asked, I'm up for, we have Global Provision, which my wife and I started. And I also, I don't know what the proper word is, through the Pentecostal Church of God out of Bedford, Texas, as their missionary representative to Haiti. And I'm up for reappointment, something you have to do every 4 years. And it comes up in just a couple weeks. And with everything going on, I'm like, keep global provision stuff going, you know, let them worry about their thing. So I texted my bishop down in Haiti the other day. I texted Bishop Reynal. And I said, Bishop, I'm up for reappointment. You want me back for another 4 years? I mean, he usually texts me back within minutes anyway. But I don't think I hardly pressed the send button. And I got one back and said, yes, 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 we're just getting started. We've done so much in the last 4 years. We've made so much progress. We can't stop now. We got to keep going. Yes, 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 yes. I'm like, okay. So I sent an email off to the superiors at B and said, schedule me up for the reappointment meeting. I'll be there. It'd be easy to set one thing aside and take care of some other things because we got some pressing issues. I got a picture you ought to see of our master bedroom. It's just glorious. There's no ceiling. There's holes in the wood floor that they cut up. Part of the wall's down. There's pink little snowflakes that fly out every so often, waft around the room. I thought maybe it was glory dust at first, but then I realized there's a whole bunch of it up in there. The sound of humidifiers and fans and heaters blowing across all night long. It's just wonderful. And you get wrapped up in those things and you say, these other things could take care of themselves. Reynal's is doing a phenomenal job down in Haiti. The pastors love him as their national bishop. Things have been stabilized inside the church. We used to have fights between ministers, and we don't have those anymore. We have calm, we have peace, we have unity, we have brotherhood. It's wonderful. And you say, I could just stay here and deal with myself, but what's God say? God says, I'm passing by. Set yourself apart. Get ready. We need to take a little walk. We need to stroll a little bit. Church, I'm here to tell you tonight, get yourself together. Set yourself apart for the purpose that God has for you because it's time for us to move. And the last thing that he says, that Joshua said into the people in verse number 5, he says, for tomorrow. I like the way he put a time limit on that. Because we have the clue or the habit of speaking in terms that are somewhere down the road, but nobody knows where, you know. Like the guy who prophesied over me one time when I was about 18 years old. I was going to buy a bankrupt circus with all their buses and their trailers and tents and stuff, and I was going to become one of the premier tent evangelists in America. And I'm thinking to myself as he's prophesying all this, I sneeze around straw and hay and stuff. I'll be a tent evangelist. I never crossed my mind, never had a desire to. And the guy's just going on and on and on and on and on. But he spoke it off like it's somewhere way down the distant future. And that was when I was 18, and I'm now 57, and it still hasn't happened. I'm kind of thanking God for that one. And, maybe when I'm 68, maybe it took me. But Joshua says, tomorrow, the Lord is going to do wonders. Translate, miracles. I am a firm believer in what I'm about to share with you. From the time of Acts chapter 2, verse 4, when the Holy Spirit poured out and things begin to happen to the people in the upper room, to the day that we are in right now, and if there's ever a generation that needed it, this generation. I understood it with the first church because there were things happening that they had never seen or experienced, and how do you get it done? Philip was talking to somebody, and the Spirit of the Lord moved him 20 miles down the road to talk to somebody else. Just like that. Hallelujah. Say, well, that was Philip, Yeah? Well, why not me? Why not me? I mean, why not when you guys stand up in the window and fall asleep and fall out in there and die out on the ground, and we'll go out and pray for you, and you get back up like nothing ever happened? Why not us? If there's ever a generation that needed a supernatural church, it's this one. We look at the things that are going on in our country right now, which you can't believe. We got skyrocketing inflation, and our leaders say, inflation, man, it's like nothing. It's zero. Like, what? Our 2.5 million people have wandered into our country this year, just wandered in. And our media and our people and our leaders say, we're secure. Nobody's doing anything wrong. They don't know what's going on. And we have all this chaos, not just politically, but it seems like crime is on the rise, and stupid crime. Just going zonkers. And we look at all those things and we say, why is all this transpiring? My response to it is where's the supernatural, empowered church that God has anointed and breathed his breath into and called to change? Those people that were gathered in the upper room, we're here today because of them and the fact that they were willing to move in the supernatural power of God. And that power and that anointing and that calling has never left. It's never changed. God is still... I've told you before, that's one reason I love going to preach in another country, because they eat it up like... When they start when you're praying for people to be healed, and mothers are grabbing their little babies and are holding them up in the air and pushing them your way just so you lay hands. And it's the first time I was in Africa, and they wanted us to anoint people to pray, and they brought us this bowl of oil, and I put my fingers in like we do in America, and kind of put a little dab on the head right here. It's like, oh, God. And my friend Victor comes up and he says, no, that's not the way you do it in Africa. And he takes my hand and he shoves it down in the oil, and you slap him on there and the oil's just going everywhere. And he's like, that's the way that you do it in Africa. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably the way that we need to do it in America too, because we're so easy and we're so comfortable and we get so relaxed with it that we forget that we're people of faith and that we are called. Joshua said, tomorrow, God is going to do wonders. I was a pastor on the other coast, and we had a guest minister come in, and he said, made this statement, and I've kept it for years now. That was probably about 2007, 2008 when I heard him say it. He said, if you're not living your life in a way that puts a demand on God to come through for you on a daily basis, then you need to change the way that you're living. If you're not living in a way that causes God to say, tomorrow I'm going to do wonders on your behalf. If you can go from one day to the next without thinking about God doing something miraculous on your behalf, then you need to change the way that you're living. Because we are called to be people of faith, and everything about us needs to be moving and breathing and living inside of Him. Come on, Rael. Everything that we're up to needs to be about tomorrow. God doing wonders. Because that's who we're called to be, church. Now, maybe I preach this a little bit tonight to remind myself of everything we're going through. My wife is the list maker, and I think there's enough pages in this notebook that she's writing about things that we got to do to the house, take care of. And the insurance adjuster, I'm sure, is thrilled with the 4 revisions to the personal property listing that he has received so far. And I don't know how we're up to 175 or 180 pictures that we have sent him of personal property, each and every single little item. Labeled, what it was worth. And you can get overwhelmed with it. You look at a hole in your roof. You look at your, what do you do with the screen door on your roof? I'm not sure, but if you come up with an answer, let me know, because we have a screen door on our roof, and I'm not sure how practical it is or what to do with it, but it's there. God, it's amazing I can laugh through all this. Maybe I did this tonight to remind myself, but I hope it just wasn't for me. I hope I'm reminding you that we got to be people of faith. Not just when it comes to healing. I want to see the miraculous happen. I want to see things that people can't explain take place. I opened up my freezer and there was only one package of hamburger in there, but I opened it up today and there's 4 packages of hamburger and 6 packages of chicken and a pork chop. I want to be like my dad. Newly married, 17 years old, driving an old Studebaker with 4 bald tires. Got a revival service scheduled in California. They're living in Illinois, and they set off for California with $5 in their pocket. Somehow they never ran out of gas. Never put any in. Never had a flat tire. I want to see that kind of stuff. The old pastor who pulled me aside and said, man, we used to drive, put 2 pans under the car when we shut it off, one to catch the water and one to catch the oil, and then we'd fill it back up when we came out after church. We traveled all over the Midwest, an old car like that. He said you could see the crack in the block, but it still ran somehow. When we preached to kids, and thousands of young people gave their lives to the Lord. Many of them went into ministry and pioneered churches. It's living by faith. It's seeing things that nobody else sees and moving to it. That's the kind of church that God is calling us to. Would you stand to your feet tonight? Lord, I come before you tonight and I ask you, this congregation that's here tonight, would you take us to places that we haven't been? Maybe places we haven't even dreamed about. But your Spirit is headed that way and we are following you. Our footstep is following in the same dusty footprint that we see on the road, and we're headed along with you. God, I don't know where we're going, but I know that you're already there. I don't know what's going to take place when I get there, but I know that you saw it before we ever left home. Let the gift of faith begin to fall across this place, Lord. Every heart, every mind. Let us be people walking and talking different than others. Let us be set apart and sanctified for your purpose. Whether it's just down the street or it's halfway around the world. People of faith, leading people to Jesus to learn how to become more people of faith. The altars are open tonight if you need to come and renew inside of you. Maybe you haven't been living that way. Maybe you've got dreams that have long gone because you let your faith go by the wayside, didn't exercise it, didn't use it. Come back and get that gift of faith again and begin to follow the Lord. We're here to pray with you. Yes, Lord.
We will stand in faith, walk by faith, live by faith. We believe, we believe, we believe. We'll stand in faith, see by faith, receive by faith. We believe, we believe. This is how blind men get their sight. This is how dead men start to rise. This is how small things multiply. Nothing's impossible, nothing's impossible. This is where oceans have to part. This is where light comes through the dark. This is where we see who you are. Nothing's impossible.